In a bustling high school in Cleveland, Ohio, a young girl named Maya Thompson walked through the doors of Crestwood High for the first time. The brick building towered against the overcast sky, its windows reflecting the muted light of a chilly November morning. Students poured in, laughing and chatting in groups that seemed to form around invisible social lines. Maya adjusted her second-hand backpack and glanced at her phone. 7:45 a.m., 15 minutes, until first period. 15 minutes to find her locker, memorize the layout, and figure out where to eat lunch without drawing attention. This wasn't Maya's first new school. Over the past 3 years, she had attended schools in Chicago, Atlanta, and now Cleveland. Each time, she hoped this would be the place where she could finally blend into the background. Her mother's job with a nonprofit organization meant constant relocations, chasing grants and funding opportunities across the Midwest and South. "Just keep your head down, sweetheart," her mother had said that morning, adjusting Maya's curly hair with gentle fingers. "We have a good feeling about Cleveland. This could be our permanent stop." Maya wanted to believe it. She wanted to think that Crestwood High would be different from Lincoln High in Chicago, where Jake Thompson had tormented her for being too smart for the popular kids and too different for the academic ones. Or from Riverdale Prep in Atlanta, where Sarah Cooper had made her life miserable for 3 months before her family relocated again as she walked through the entrance, past clusters of students who barely glanced her way. Maya knew better than to hope too hard. Hope was dangerous. It made you vulnerable. The first week passed like a carefully choreographed dance of invisibility. Maya had perfected the art of being unremarkable. She sat in the back corner of every classroom, not so far back that teachers noticed her isolation, but not close enough to be called on regularly. She ate lunch alone at a table near the windows, always with a book prop open to discourage conversation. Her teachers seemed kind enough. Mrs. Johnson in AP Literature smiled when she saw Maya reading Toni Morrison during lunch, and Mr. Lee in Advanced Chemistry nodded approvingly when she correctly answered a complex equation on her second day. But kindness from adults was different from acceptance from peers, and Maya had learned not to confuse the two WY Friday of her first week. She allowed herself a small moment of cautious optimism. Maybe this time would be different. Maybe she could finish her senior year in peace, graduate quietly, and disappear into college, where being smart and different wasn't a crime punishable by social exile. She should have known better. Enter the queen bee, Chloe Ramirez. Chloe had been the undisputed queen of Crestwood High since her sophomore year. At 17, she possessed a kind of effortless confidence that came from never being told no, never facing real consequences, and never meeting anyone who couldn't be intimidated into submission. She wasn't just popular, she was a social architect, carefully constructing hierarchies and alliances that kept everyone in their designated place. Her father was a prominent businessman in Cleveland, and her mother served on the school board. Chloe had learned early that power wasn't just about having money. It was about knowing exactly how to use it. Chloe's inner circle consisted of 3 carefully chosen disciples. Emma, a blonde girl from the wealthy suburbs who laughed too loudly at everything Chloe said. Ryan, a football player whose loyalty could be bought with social status. And Tiffany, who served as Chloe's intelligence network, always knowing exactly who was dating whom, who was struggling financially, and who had secrets worth exploiting. Together, they controlled the social ecosystem of Crestwood High with ruthless efficiency. They decided who got invited to parties, who got excluded from group projects, and who became the target of whispered rumors that could destroy a reputation overnight. Teachers either didn't notice or chose not to intervene. After all, Chloe's mother did sit on the school board. When Chloe first noticed Maya during the second week of November, her predatory instincts immediately activated. Everything about the new girl screamed victim. The way she kept her eyes down, the carefully neutral expression she wore like armor, the isolation she seemed to wrap around herself like a protective blanket. Chloe had seen girls like Maya before, those who transferred schools frequently, always running from something, always hoping to start fresh somewhere new. They were perfect targets because they had no allies, no established social connections, and no understanding of the complex power dynamics that govern high school life. What Chloe couldn't see, what nobody could see, was that Maya's careful invisibility wasn't weakness. It was strategy. The first strike happened on a Thursday during lunch, just as Maya was beginning to believe she might actually make it through senior year unnoticed. She had finished eating and was walking toward the trash cans when her shoulder bumped against something soft and expensive. Chloe's designer purse, a gift from her father for her 17th birthday, tumbled to the floor, spilling lip gloss, car keys, and several crumpled $20 bills across the cafeteria tiles. The collision wasn't intentional. Maya had been reading while walking, a habit she developed to avoid making eye contact with other students. But intention didn't matter in the social mathematics of high school politics. The entire cafeteria fell silent, and 300 students suddenly found themselves witnesses to what everyone knew would be a defining moment. "I'm so sorry," Maya whispered, immediately dropping to her knees to collect Chloe's scattered belongings. Her voice was barely audible, but in the perfect silence of the cafeteria, everyone heard it. Chloe stood perfectly still for a moment, calculating. This was exactly the kind of opportunity she lived for. A public stage, a clear victim, and an audience hungry for drama. "Are you serious right now?" Chloe's voice cut through the silence like a blade. Each word was precisely enunciated for maximum impact. "Do you not know how to walk without destroying other people's property?" Maya continued collecting items from the floor, her hands trembling slightly. She had been through this before. She knew the script: apologize, accept the humiliation, and pray it would end quickly. But Chloe wasn't interested in quick endings. She was interested in establishing dominance. "Maybe if you weren't so busy trying to blend in with your frizzy hair and those thrift store clothes, you'd actually see where you're walking," Chloe continued, her voice rising with each word. "Don't they teach your kind how to act in public?" The racist comment landed like a physical blow. Several students gasped audibly. Others looked away, suddenly fascinated by their lunch trays, but nobody spoke up. Nobody ever did. Maya's hand stopped moving. For just a moment, she froze completely. Chloe's words echoed in her head alongside similar comments from Jake in Chicago, from Sarah in Atlanta, from countless others who had seen her as nothing more than a target for their cruelty. But as she knelt there on the cafeteria floor, collecting another girl's belongings while enduring racist taunts in front of 300 of her peers, something shifted inside Maya. Something dark and patient and calculating. Chloe Ramirez had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She just didn't know it yet. After that Thursday, Maya became Chloe's favorite project. What had started as opportunistic bullying evolved into a systematic campaign of harassment that followed Maya through every hallway, every classroom, every moment of her school day. It began with words, racist comments whispered just loud enough for Maya to hear as she passed. "Go back where you came from. Maybe try straightening that frizzy hair. Your kind doesn't belong here anyway." Chloe had perfected the art of racist microaggressions. Comments that were cruel enough to wound but subtle enough to give her plausible deniability if any adults overheard. Then came the physical harassment. Books knocked from Maya's hands in crowded hallways, sending her papers scattering while students stepped over them without helping. Her chair mysteriously disappearing from classrooms, forcing her to stand awkwardly while everyone snickered. Someone, though Maya could never prove who, poured chocolate milk into her backpack, ruining 3 textbooks and a week's worth of homework. The lunch tray incident became a regular occurrence. At least twice a week, Maya would find herself wearing her lunch thanks to an accidental collision with one of Chloe's crew members. She started bringing extra clothes to school, keeping them in her locker for the inevitable wardrobe changes. But the worst part wasn't the harassment itself. It was the complicity of everyone around her. Teachers who witnessed Chloe's behavior either didn't understand the racial undertones or actively chose to ignore them. Girls will be girls, Mrs. Adams had said when Maya tentatively mentioned the bullying during office hours. High school drama always seems worse than it is. Students were even worse. They watched Chloe's daily torment of Maya like it was entertainment, some filming it for social media, others just grateful it wasn't happening to them. A few looked uncomfortable, but discomfort wasn't the same as action. "Why don't you ever fight back?" Emma asked Maya one afternoon after a particularly brutal hallway encounter. Emma sat behind Maya in AP Calculus and seemed genuinely curious rather than cruel. Maya just shrugged, gathering her scattered papers for the 3rd time that week. Because how could she explain? How could she tell Emma that she wasn't scared of Chloe? She was scared of what would happen if she stopped pretending to be weak. She had come to Crestwood High to start over, to stay hidden, to keep her past buried in Chicago and Atlanta. But Chloe was making that impossible with every racist comment, every public humiliation, every reminder that some people would always see her as nothing more than a target. What Chloe didn't realize was that she wasn't breaking Maya down. She was building her up. Every cruel word, every humiliating prank, every moment of public harassment was adding fuel to a fire that had been burning quietly for 3 years across 3 different cities. And when that fire finally erupted, it would consume everything in its path. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in early December. Snow had begun falling outside Crestwood High, and the hallways buzzed with pre-winter break energy. Students were distracted. Teachers were tired, and Chloe was feeling particularly cruel. Maya was walking to her AP chemistry class when she noticed something taped to her back. The laughter started before she could reach around to remove it, pointing, whispering, phone cameras clicking to capture her humiliation. "Go back to Africa" was written in large red letters across a piece of poster board that Chloe had somehow attached to Maya's jacket, without her noticing. The racist message was impossible to ignore, impossible to explain away as teenage drama or harmless fun. It was pure, undiluted hatred, and everyone in the hallway could see it. Maya peeled the sign from her back with shaking hands, while Chloe and her crew watched from across the hallway, not even trying to hide their involvement. Chloe's signature smirk was plastered across her face, the same expression she wore every time she successfully humiliated another student. But this time, instead of hurrying away with her head down, Maya looked up. She walked directly across the hallway until she was standing face to face with Chloe, the racist sign still crumpled in her hand. "You should stop," Maya said quietly, her voice carrying clearly in the suddenly silent hallway. "You have no idea what I'm capable of." For just a moment, Chloe's smirk faltered. There was something in Maya's voice, something in her eyes that didn't match the helpless victim Chloe had been tormenting for months. Something that suggested this quiet girl might not be as powerless as she appeared. But the moment passed quickly. Chloe had spent too many years as Crestwood High's undisputed queen to be intimidated by someone like Maya. "Oh, wow!" Chloe burst out laughing, loud enough for the entire hallway to hear. "Look at that. The little mouse finally found her voice. What are you going to do? Call the NAACP? File a complaint with the school board?" The crowd laughed along, as they always did, phones emerging to record what everyone assumed would be another humiliating moment for quiet girl who never fought back. But Maya wasn't laughing. She wasn't crying. She wasn't even angry. At least not in any way that Chloe could recognize. If Chloe had been smarter, if she had been less blinded by her own sense of superiority, she might have noticed the way Maya's hands clenched into fists. She might have seen the calculation behind those quiet eyes, the patient fury of someone who had endured too much for too long. She might have realized that this wasn't a threat. It was a promise. But Chloe didn't realize. She thought Maya was harmless, just another victim who would eventually transfer to a different school like so many others before her. And that assumption would destroy everything Chloe had spent 3 years building. The revenge began at 3:17 a.m. on a Wednesday morning. While Chloe Ramirez slept peacefully in her expensive bedroom, dreaming of her upcoming winter formal plans, Maya sat in her bedroom, laptop open, surrounded by notebooks filled with 3 months of careful observations. She had been preparing for this moment since that first day in the cafeteria, documenting every cruel comment, every public humiliation, every racist attack Chloe had launched. But more than that, she had been studying Chloe herself, learning her patterns, her weaknesses, her carefully constructed social empire. Maya discovered something important during her months of invisibility. When people think you're powerless, they stop being careful around you. They say things they shouldn't say, do things they shouldn't do, reveal secrets they should keep hidden. And Maya had been listening to everything. She knew about Chloe's fake charity fundraiser that had raised $3,000 for underprivileged kids, money that had somehow ended up paying for Chloe's spring break trip to Cancun. She knew about the essay Chloe had bought online for her AP English class, the same essay that had earned her recognition as Crestwood High's most promising young writer. She knew about Chloe's systematic harassment and not just her, but dozen other students over the past 3 years. Students who had transferred away rather than continue enduring the torture. Most importantly, she knew that Chloe's mother's position on the school board wasn't the only reason teachers looked the other way. Chloe's father made significant donations to the school's athletic programs, donations that came with the understanding that his daughter's behavior wouldn't be scrutinized too closely. But understanding the system was only the first step. Dismantling it required precision timing and the kind of patience that came from years of being underestimated that Maya's fingers moved across her keyboard with steady precision. The first wave went live at 3:30 a.m., a carefully curated compilation of videos that Chloe's own friends had posted to social media. Videos that showed her racist comments, her bullying behavior, her casual cruelty towards students she considered beneath her. Maya had spent weeks collecting these clips, editing them together into an undeniable narrative of systematic harassment. The video was uploaded simultaneously to 12 different platforms under anonymous accounts Maya had created months earlier. She tagged local news stations, civil rights organizations, and Cleveland's most prominent social media influencers. She made sure the video included subtitles, making Chloe's racist comments impossible to ignore or explain away at UPY Dawn. The video had been viewed 10,000 times. By noon, it had reached 50,000. By the time Chloe walked into Crestwood High that Wednesday afternoon, it had gone viral across Cleveland's social media landscape. That Chloe's first clue that something had changed came when she walked through Crestwood's front doors and noticed the whispers. Not the usual whispers of admiration or social gossip, but something different, something that felt dangerous. Students were staring at their phones, then looking at her, then quickly looking away. Even her own crew seemed nervous, clustering around her with forced smiles that didn't reach their eyes. "What's going on?" Chloe demanded as they reached her locker. Emma and Tiffany exchanged glances. Ryan was suddenly very interested in his sneakers. "It's probably nothing," Emma said too quickly. "Just some stupid video someone posted. You know how social media is." But by second period, Chloe knew it wasn't nothing. Teachers were looking at her differently. Students were pointing. Her phone was buzzing constantly with notifications she was afraid to check. During lunch, she finally watched a video that was destroying her reputation in real time. There she was in high definition, making racist comments about Maya's hair. There she was, laughing while her friends poured milk on Maya's homework. There she was, holding up the Go Back to Africa sign with a satisfied smirk, watching herself through the lens of an outside observer. Chloe finally understood how her behavior looked to people who weren't part of her social circle. She looked cruel. She looked racist. She looked like exactly the kind of person who deserved to be exposed and humiliated. But the video was only the beginning. At 2:15 p.m., the school's intercom system crackled to life during fifth period. Instead of the usual administrative announcements, a familiar voice filled every classroom in the building, Maya's voice calm and clear and impossible to ignore. "My name is Maya Thompson, and for the past 3 months, I have been a target of systematic racist harassment by Chloe Ramirez and her friends. I have documented every incident, recorded every comment, and saved every piece of evidence. I try to handle this quietly through proper channels, but adults at the school have repeatedly failed to address the problem. So now I'm addressing it myself." In classrooms across Crestwood High, 300 students sat in stunned silence as Maya's voice continued. Chloe Ramirez has spent 3 years making life miserable for students she considers beneath her. She has used racist language, engaged in systematic harassment, and created a culture of fear that has driven multiple students to transfer to other schools. She has done this with the implicit permission of adults who chose to look the other way rather than confront the daughter of wealthy donors. The evidence of her behavior is now public. The choice of how to respond is yours. And with that, every screen in the school, classroom monitors, cafeteria displays, even the digital marquee visible from the street, lit up with a comprehensive documentation of Chloe Ramirez's reign of terror. Chloe didn't come to school the next day or the day after that. By Friday, rumors were flying through Crestwood's hallways like wildfire. Some students claimed Chloe's parents had pulled her out in shame. Others whispered that she was too humiliated to show her face. A few suggested the Ramirez family was already looking at private schools in other districts. The truth, Maya learned from overheard conversations, was more complex. Chloe's father's business was facing scrutiny after the video went viral. Clients didn't want to be associated with someone whose daughter was a documented racist. Chloe's mother had quietly resigned from the school board after other members called for her removal. The family's social standing in Cleveland's elite circles had crumbled overnight. Within 2 weeks, the Ramirez family had relocated entirely, leaving Cleveland for a fresh start somewhere else. Maya sat at her usual lunch table alone, but she was no longer invisible. Students who had watched her harassment in silence for months now nodded respectfully when they passed her in hallways. A few had even apologized, awkward and ashamed, as if they finally understood the complicity in what had happened. But Maya didn't need their apologies. She hadn't orchestrated Chloe's downfall to become popular or to gain allies. She had done it to survive, to reclaim her dignity, and to send a message that would echo through Crestwood's halls long after she graduated. The quiet ones aren't always weak. Sometimes they're just waiting, watching, planning. And when they finally move, the impact can reshape everything. Crestwood High was different after Chloe's exile. Not perfect. Bullying doesn't disappear overnight, and systemic problems aren't solved by exposing one cruel teenager. But something fundamental had shifted in the school's social ecosystem. Students thought twice before choosing targets for harassment, especially when that harassment involved racist comments or systematic cruelty. Teachers paid closer attention to social dynamics, perhaps realizing that ignoring problems didn't make them disappear. The administration implemented new policies around bullying and harassment, policies that might actually be enforced now that the school board wasn't protecting wealthy donors' children. Maya finally found the peace she had been seeking across 3 cities and 4 schools. She finished her senior year quietly, graduated with honors, and earned a full scholarship to study computer science at Case Western Reserve University. On graduation day, as she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, Maya allowed herself a small smile. She had survived Chloe Ramirez. She had exposed a system of cruelty and complicity. She had proven that silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. And she had learned something important about herself. She was stronger than she had ever imagined. Years later, when Maya was working as a cybersecurity specialist in Chicago, she would sometimes think about her time at Crestwood High. The story of how the quiet girl had taken down the school's most feared bully had become something of a legend, passed down through subsequent classes like a cautionary tale. Students still talk about pulling a Maya when they want to describe someone who appeared weak, but was actually gathering strength. Someone who was quietly preparing to fight back against injustice. Maya's story reminds us that strength comes in many forms. Justice doesn't always wear a cape, and the most profound changes often begin with the people who seem to have no power at all. Never underestimate the quiet ones. You never know what storms they're hiding inside, what strategies are developing, or what justice they're preparing to unleash. Because sometimes the person everyone ignores is the one who sees everything. Sometimes the victim everyone overlooks is the one who will change everything. And sometimes a girl who seems powerless is actually the most dangerous person in the room.